Is there a future for graphic design? That's the question that we're gonna grapple with this morning. I'm always backlit. I'm in South Minneapolis. This is Joshua, MVA studio. I'm on my way to my contract gig, but we need to pull over real quick so that we can make this video for the daily vlog. So let's take two things here. One, I used to do a podcast back in the day, and it was called Through Process. And probably like in 2012 or 2013, somehow we ended up talking about things like Fiverr. And I naively said that I was not worried about Fiverr. Something to the effect of real graphic design, showing value to clients, blah, blah, blah. I can't remember what I said. Whatever it was naive and stupid. And the other thing is, like yesterday or the day before, Creative Review just did some article on how AI is going to affect the creative industries, and they tweeted out these quotes from people they had talked to, like freelancers and agency people, and the quotes were so rose-colored glasses. They were again stuff like, you know, I'm sure it'll have an effect, but if we work together and protect jobs, everything will be fine. Everything will not be fine. At this point in time, it's really clear that if you do something and you get paid for it, someone else is going to try to find a way to do it for less at scale. And quality is not really going to matter. I mean, there's places where you can flip the situation and quality goes up by virtue of cutting out the established party. But in general, somebody's coming for your lunch, and I think if you want to know whether AI is going to affect what you do, it works like this. If anyone is asking the question, how will AI affect the creative industry, you already know that it can be affected, and it will. It does not matter to me to conjecture how this is going to happen or what effect is going to happen. What matters to me is the simple fact that it's going to happen, and if I am smart, I am going to assume that it is worse than I can possibly imagine. Not because I want to be negative or because I want to be bleak or grim or scare people out of the industry or something like that. I don't want to be sideswiped. So I need to imagine that however it does affect the creative industries is going to be dystopian, and that it's just going to cut out the middle. In the way that these sort of technological disruptions are doing in every single industry, you're going to have like a 1% at the top, and then everybody else fighting for scraps at the bottom. Bleak. But then the question becomes like, okay, what's the antidote to this? And I don't think it's a mass prescriptive one, but I think brand is going to be everything. And I don't mean it in the way that graphic designers necessarily talk about brand, maybe in the way ad agencies talk about brand, which is that the connection that they have with the consumer, maybe what they stand for. But I think there's going to be that level of brand, and the way that I view it is through the lens of somebody like, say, Gary Vaynerchuk or Grant Cardone. The way that Gary talks about building brand is connection, like connect, and forge a relationship with as many people as possible, even if it's fleeting. You know, at the scale that he is at now, just saying hi to someone is a meaningful connection to the person that he said hi to. But back in the day, you know, 2007, 2008, the way that he did it was like just talking to everybody about wine and later about business. But he didn't have any of the normal trappings of what we would call brand, meaning that there wasn't a coherent visual identity. He was obviously acting from a place of like a central belief, but it's not like you go to some website and read like our core values or whatever. And when I look at Grant Cardone, Grant's version of the connect is pump as much value into the media landscape as is humanly possible. And again, like, well, even now, Grant's stuff isn't always graphically pretty, though now he has designers, but back in the day, it was, I think he still would do this, quantity over quality, but back in the day it was really quantity over quality. iPhone videos, really rough looking, like quotes and whatnot. But I think the thing is that, and the reason that they matter is, you might take it for granted how big Gary is now, but every other business person that was big before Gary was unbelievably rich or did something unbelievably cool, like started Nike. And even Phil Knight is not as big as Gary is. He's just he's only known because he owns Nike. There's literally nothing else anybody knows about him unless you've read a book about him. If you've been following Gary since, like, I think the first time I heard of him was in 2008, and seeing how big he is now, like, a random dude who owns an ad agency is not supposed to be as famous and have as much celebrity as he has. But that speaks to, like, dedicated brand building. And so I think to fight, you know, God, I had this quote, and I don't know what it was from, but it's in a sketchbook, and it's always stuck with me. Fighting back against the onslaught of an unthinkable present. Depending on how you move, these are going to be rough times. And the big question is going to be, like, what are you going to do to fight back against that? Because the idea that you're going to band together and protect jobs, you are naive. There's way more taxi drivers than there ever were designers or creatives, and those motherfuckers couldn't band together and protect their jobs. Why in God's name do you think a bunch of photographers are going to be able to do that? It's naive. So the question is, if you're going to stick it out and you're not going to decide to compete on price, which is like what a lot of people are going to do. A lot of people are going to work 7 days a week to not make very much money to convince themselves that that at least they don't have to work for the man. Like, I remember seeing this article, like, it was supposed to be like a Fiverr success story, and it was this girl, and it was all about how, like, she managed to, like, go from being unemployed to making like 80 grand a year. But she made 80 grand a year working 7 days a week, probably about 10 hours a day. That's terrible. She should just get a job at that point. So that's not the way to do it. And it's not, the only people that are going to win in these scenarios is whoever develops the platform and takes a cut of everything. So if that's not the way you're going to go, if you're still going to do creative work, it's going to be about brand. And initially, when I thought of this video, the thing I thought of was, like, who has a huge brand in a commodity market? The world did not need Yeezys. The world did not need whatever. I don't even know how much a pair of Yeezys is now at this point. There's plenty of sneakers. You can get crappy sneakers at Target that are stylish enough and will work on your feet enough. But the power of brand convinced people to actually actively buy gross colored ugly gear. Like, that's how strong brand is, and to pay hundreds of dollars for it in a market where you could find a stylish pair of shoes for 25 bucks if you needed to. That's how important it is. And you know, like, whenever you think about a situation and you find yourself going, man, this is impossible, you got to look at those exceptions and then be like, okay, like, what does the exception prove? Because there's always a way to kind of you know, zag when everybody else is zigging. All right, that one's a little bit rambling, but I hope that helps you out. If you're younger and getting into this game now, really think about how you're gonna compete, and it doesn't have to be some big, heady, fancy thing. It might just be shaking hands. All right, thanks a lot.